"What kind of worthless junk did you give me?" my father said. Then he slapped me in front of 30 guests holding champagne glasses on the night of his 55th birthday in a house I had scrubbed on my hands and knees since sunrise. I ran out the front door with nothing but a backpack and a bruise on my cheek. I didn't know it then, but that slap was the last thing Gerald Talbot would ever do to me. Because by midnight, I would be sitting in a black SUV across from a stranger who would say 5 words that unraveled 18 years of lies. Before I continue, take a moment to like and subscribe if this story truly resonates with you. Leave a comment sharing where you're watching from and what time it is there. My name is Hillary, although for most of my life, I was made to answer to Allison. I'm 21. Let me take you back to that Saturday morning, the day Gerald Talbot turned 55, and the final day I lived under his roof. I set my alarm for 5 a.m., like every Saturday. But this one came with a 2-page handwritten list Donna had left on the kitchen counter the night before. Sweep the patio, arrange 32 folding chairs, one for each guest on Gerald's list, press the tablecloth, slice the lemons, wash the Pottery Barn serving platters by hand because the dishwasher leaves spots. Their house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in Henrico County, Virginia, a 4-bedroom colonial with a manicured lawn. Gerald paid someone to mow, but told the neighbors I handled. Inside, the dining table was solid oak, seating 12, polished weekly by me. On the counter were 2 cases of Napa Valley Cabernet and a 3-tier cake from a bakery that charged more for fondant than I earned in a week. My room was downstairs, not the finished basement, but the storage closet beside the water heater. No window. A twin mattress Gerald pulled from a curbside pile when I was 9. A wool blanket that smelled like damp cardboard no matter how often I washed it. Megan's room was upstairs. Queen bed, flat screen, a vanity mirror framed with Hollywood bulbs. She was 23, still living at home, still using a credit card linked to Gerald's account, and still unable to boil an egg because that was my role. I spent 3 months saving for Gerald's gift, a real leather wallet from a department store downtown. It cost $84, which may not sound like much unless you're earning $11 an hour, scrubbing sheet pans at a restaurant called Rosie's off Route 1. I wrapped it in craft paper because I couldn't afford a gift bag. Standing in that kitchen at 5 a.m. with flour on my hands, I had no idea that wallet would be the last thing I ever gave him. Gerald came downstairs at 10, wearing a powder blue Ralph Lauren polo with the large pony logo, sharply pressed khakis, and cologne so strong it reached me before he did. He walked the patio like a commander reviewing details, moved a balloon cluster 6 inches to the left, studied the lemon slices in the water pitcher, and said without looking at me, "They're uneven. Do them again." Donna appeared at noon, hair styled, pearl studs in place, a linen dress from Ann Taylor she ordered online and made me steam. She checked the kitchen, ran a finger along the countertop, and whispered to Gerald, quietly, but not enough, "She only got you something cheap. Just brace yourself." Megan arrived last. New dress, fresh highlights, heels clicking across the floor, I had waxed at 6 a.m. She handed Gerald an Apple Watch Series 9, stainless steel, retailing around $700, charged to the supplementary credit card he gave her for emergencies. He opened it, smiled broadly, and kissed her forehead. "This is my girl," he told the first guests at the door. "She always knows what her old man likes." He didn't look at me. He never did when others were watching. I carried trays, refilled glasses, wiped condensation rings from the coffee table before they set. When a woman from Gerald's office asked Donna, "Shouldn't Allison sit and eat with us?" Donna smiled politely and replied, "Oh, she prefers to help. It's her way of showing gratitude. You know how it is with adopted ones." I continued serving. It happened during the gift opening. Gerald sat at the head of the table as if it were a throne. 30 guests surrounded him. Neighbors, church friends, co-workers from the insurance agency he managed. Champagne flutes reflected the patio string lights. Megan perched on the armrest, filming on her iPhone. Donna stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, projecting complete control. I stepped forward with the craft paper package. On the front, I had written in my neatest handwriting, "Happy birthday, Dad." Gerald took it, weighed it in his hand. For a moment, I thought he might smile. He tore the paper, pulled out the wallet, opened it, closed it, and raised it slightly. "What kind of worthless junk did you give me?" His voice cut through the conversation. Forks paused. A glass was set down carefully. I tried to explain. "I saved for 3 months." 3 months and this is it? He stood. The chair scraped the flagstone. Even the dog gets better treats. Then he hit me, an open palm across the left side of my face. The sound was sharp and flat. My head snapped sideways. A champagne flute fell and shattered on the patio. For a second, that was the only sound. No one intervened. Donna looked at her plate. A coworker studied his napkin. Megan bit her lip and kept recording. One person stood, Ruth Kessler, our 70-year-old neighbor. "Gerald, that was uncalled for. Stay out of my family business." She sat down, but she didn't look away from me. I have never forgotten that. I stood there with the taste of copper in my mouth and the wallet on the ground between us. A thought formed. That slap will be the best evidence the lawyers need. I didn't understand it yet, but something inside me had already begun calculating. I didn't return to the party. I went to the storage closet, took my faded navy JanSport backpack from the nail on the wall, and packed what I could. 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans without holes, a toothbrush, a phone charger, the envelope I had found in a discarded box last spring with a state logo I didn't yet understand, and $340 in cash, mostly 1s and 5s from tips at Rosie's that I hid because Gerald monitored my bank account. $340, a backpack, and a bruise already turning purple. That was everything I owned. I walked through the living room on my way out. The party had resumed. Gerald was laughing, champagne in hand, the wallet gone. Megan was showing guests something on her phone, likely the video. Donna stood at the window watching me cross the yard, then pulled the curtain closed. No one called my name. Outside, the October air hit my face, and the sting on my cheek intensified. Henrico County at 9 p.m. is dark. Not city dark with lights on every corner, but suburban dark, where street lights are spaced far apart and silence feels intentional. I walked along Patterson Avenue with no destination, just distance. The music faded behind me until it disappeared. After about 2 miles, headlights slowed behind me. A black Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows and Virginia plates stopped 10 feet ahead. The rear door opened. I should have run. Every instinct said run. But I was tired of running from things. For once, I wanted to see what was approaching me. A man stepped out first. Mid-50s, tall, lean, wearing a charcoal peacoat I later learned was Brooks Brothers. Well-fitted, understated. Dark brown hair threaded with silver. Hazel green eyes, wide set, catching the streetlight, the same eyes I saw in my mirror each morning. Behind him stood a shorter, red-haired woman with sharp features, holding a leather portfolio like she had left a courtroom. Professional, observant. The man's hands were trembling. "I'm sorry to frighten you," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "My name is Richard Whitford, and I believe I am your biological father." I stepped back until my shoulders hit a mailbox post. "That's not possible. My biological parents didn't want me. That's what I was told." "You were told wrong." He removed a small, worn photograph from his coat, a woman holding a toddler. The woman had auburn hair, cheekbones like mine, and a smile that tilted slightly left. The toddler had hazel green eyes. "Her name was Catherine," he said. "She was your mother. She died in a car accident when you were 2. I have spent every day since trying to find you." I looked at the photograph, then at him, then back again. The woman had my mouth, my expression, the same tilt of the head. Seeing her felt like finally recognizing something long missing. The red-haired woman spoke. "My name is Margaret Hale. I'm Mr. Whitford's attorney, specializing in family law. We are not here to take you anywhere against your will. We have been monitoring your situation through legal channels for several months. Tonight, when our investigators saw you leave the house, we decided to approach." "You were watching the house?" Margaret nodded. "The birthday party provided a safe opportunity to confirm your identity visually." She paused. "We also saw you run." Without thinking, I touched my cheek. The bruise pulsed under my fingertips. Richard Whitford looked at the mark on my face, and something in his expression shifted quietly. We sat in the back of the Escalade, Richard on one side, me on the other, Margaret in the front passenger seat with her portfolio open. The engine was running, heat set low. It was the warmest I had been all night. Richard told the story like a man who had practiced it for 18 years and still wasn't prepared. Catherine died on I-64 eastbound on a Tuesday morning in March. A delivery truck crossed the median. She was killed instantly. Richard was in the passenger seat, shattered pelvis, collapsed lung, 4 months in the hospital. Hillary, me, was at home with a neighbor. While I was in the ICU, he said, Child Protective Services placed you in emergency foster care. Standard procedure when there's no available parent. I understood that. What I didn't understand was the rest. When I got out of the hospital and filed to bring you home, they told me I couldn't. A social worker named Leonard Grubb handled the case. Grubb told the family court that I had signed a voluntary relinquishment of parental rights, surrendering custody permanently. He presented a signed form. The judge approved the adoption. Richard's jaw tightened. I never signed anything. I was on a ventilator. I couldn't hold a pen, let alone review a legal document. But the court had paperwork with my name on it, and that was enough. By the time he hired a lawyer and challenged the ruling, the adoption had been finalized. The file was sealed. His daughter had a new name, a new family, somewhere in Virginia he wasn't permitted to know. So I hired investigators, he said. Year after year, it doesn't matter what I spent, I would have spent everything. His voice stayed steady on the money. It shifted slightly on the word everything. Leonard Grubb, I said. How much did they pay him? Richard looked at Margaret. She closed her portfolio. That's what we intend to prove in court. The SUV remained parked on Patterson Avenue, hazard lights blinking against the dark. I sat with my backpack on my lap, holding the straps tightly, and told them about the envelope. Last spring, Gerald decided Megan needed a yoga studio. That meant clearing the storage closet, my room, and moving my belongings to an even smaller space by the furnace. He put most of my things in a garbage bag and left it by the curb. I went through it before the trash truck arrived. When nothing you own is secure, you learn to check and save what you can. At the bottom of a water-damaged box, beneath old report cards, and a Ziploc bag of baby clothes, I found a manila envelope with an official return address, Virginia Department of Social Services. Inside was a partially redacted document titled Title IV-E Adoption Assistance Monthly Disbursement Summary. Across the top, in plain government font, Allison G. Talbot. I didn't know what Title IV-E meant. I didn't know what a disbursement summary was, but I knew my name appeared on a government document Gerald had never shown me. So I folded it and kept it in my backpack. I had carried it for 6 months without fully understanding why. Now I handed it to Margaret. She unfolded it under the dome light. Her expression changed, not dramatically, but noticeably. This is the adoption subsidy record, she said. The state of Virginia has been paying Gerald and Donna Talbot approximately $810 per month for your care and maintenance for 18 years. She met my eyes. That's roughly $175,000. How much of it did you ever receive? I thought of the curbside mattress, the blanket that smelled like cardboard, the windowless closet. None, I said. Richard turned toward the window. In the reflection, I saw his jaw tighten. All those years, I said quietly, he called me a burden. But I wasn't a burden. I was income. Margaret drove us to a Hilton off Broad Street. Not back to the Talbot house, not to a shelter, just somewhere clean, quiet, and secure. Richard checked in under his name, separate rooms with an adjoining door. The first thing I did in mine was stand still and not know what to do. The bed had white sheets that smelled like detergent, not mildew. There was a window. I opened the curtains and looked at the parking lot lights for a long time. I hadn't stood at a window in my own room in years. Memories surfaced steadily. I began cooking family meals at 10. Gerald said it built responsibility. By 12, I handled laundry, dishes, and grocery shopping on foot because he wouldn't drive me. Megan received a Toyota Camry at 16. I received a bus pass that expired after a month and was never renewed. So I walked 90 minutes to Rosie's for my shifts. Gerald never allowed me to keep my documents. No birth certificate, no social security card, no state ID. When I asked for a driver's license at 17, he said, "What for? You don't have anywhere to go." At the time, I believed him. Now I understood it was intentional. I kept asking myself, if Gerald despised me, why keep me? Why not return me to the system? If I was so worthless, why hold on? Now I had the answer. $810 a month. Have you ever known someone who treated you like nothing but refused to let you leave? Someone who made you feel small but kept you close because you benefited them? If you have, you understand the math. Donna's voice echoed in my memory, controlled, sharp beneath sweetness. Gratitude, Allison, that's all we've ever asked for. Is that so hard? No. What was difficult was realizing I had been grateful to people who were profiting from me. 2 weeks before the party, before the slap, Gerald had already shown me who he was. It was a Tuesday evening. He called me into his home office, a room no one entered without permission. Mahogany desk, leather wingback chair, shelves of hardcover books arranged by color. A manila folder lay open in front of him. "Sit down," he said. "Not have a seat. Sit down." He pushed a document across the desk. 10 or 12 pages, dense print, blue signature tab at the bottom. "This is a voluntary agreement," he said. "It states that you choose to remain under my guardianship because you are not financially or emotionally prepared to live independently. Sign it." I scanned the language. Much of it was difficult to interpret, but one clause was clear. The agreement authorized Gerald to continue managing all state and federal benefits tied to dependent care. He wanted me to sign over the subsidy again, this time with my adult signature, so he could keep collecting after I aged out of the system. "Why do I need to sign this?" I asked. His expression stayed flat. "Because without this family, you're on the street. You don't have a degree. You don't have savings. You don't even have an ID. You're going to sign it before my birthday. Consider it your gift to me." I didn't sign. I asked for time. He said nothing, just closed the folder and returned it to the drawer slowly. That's why he hit me at the party. It wasn't about the wallet. It was because I had said no for the first time in 18 years and he would not accept it. The morning after, at the Hilton, I woke at 5 a.m., out of habit, already running through a chore list in my head before I remembered there was none. Just a hotel room with white sheets and a window filled with gray October sky. There was a knock at the adjoining door. Richard stood there dressed, holding 2 coffees from the lobby. He placed one on the desk and sat across the room, not too close, not distant, simply present, as if aware that sudden movement might cause me to retreat. Margaret arrived at 8 with a garment bag. Inside, new jeans and a cream-colored cashmere sweater, tags still attached. "Something clean," she said. I changed in the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. It was the first time I wore something no one else had worn before me. When I stepped out, Richard's eyes reddened slightly, but he remained composed. "Catherine had that same look," he said, "like she was deciding whether to trust the mirror." I sat on the bed. "I need proof, not just the photo or the story. I need a DNA test. If you are who you say you are, the science will confirm it. And if you're not, I need to know that too." Richard nodded immediately. "Of course. Margaret has already located an AABB-accredited lab in Richmond. We can go today." No hesitation, no offense, no pressure. I had spent 21 years in a house where questions were treated as defiance. Here, questions were answered plainly. "I've spent my life doing what I was told," I said. "If I trust you, it will be because I chose to." Richard set down his coffee. That's exactly how it should be. The lab was a low brick building off Carey Street, clean, clinical, fluorescent lighting. A technician swabbed the inside of my cheek, then Richard's. The vials were labeled. Results would take 3 to 5 business days. 5 days. I had waited 21 years to understand my identity. 5 more felt like holding my breath. While we waited, Richard brought items to the hotel. Not gifts in the transactional sense, but pieces of history. A photo album. Catherine pregnant, laughing on a porch swing, one hand resting on her stomach. Catherine holding a newborn in a pink hat. Richard showed me a photograph of Catherine, himself, and a baby standing in front of a brick bungalow in Richmond's Fan District with a red door. The baby already had hazel green eyes. "That's the house you came home to," Richard said. "I still own it. I couldn't bring myself to sell it." I studied each photo carefully, as if memorizing details for a test. My mother's face, her hands, the way she stood slightly tilted with her weight on her left foot, the same way I stand without thinking. "She's beautiful," I said. "You look exactly like her," he replied, "especially the eyes." On the 5th day, Margaret called. I was sitting on the hotel bed with the album open to a photo of Catherine blowing out birthday candles when my phone rang. "99.998% probability of paternity," she said. "It's confirmed. Richard Whitford is your biological father." I didn't speak for several seconds. I held the phone, looked at the photograph, and felt something open inside my chest, not breaking, but unlocking, like a door finally opened from the other side. 99.998 a number. But for me, it was the first evidence in 21 years that I wasn't unwanted. Margaret continued, steady and precise. "Now we have enough. The next step is family court." What I learned later, from court filings, from Ruth Kessler's testimony, and from texts Donna eventually gave Margaret, was this. The morning after the party, Gerald called Henrico County Police and reported me missing. Not out of concern, but calculation. The responding officer ran my information and told him I was 21, a legal adult. If I had left voluntarily, there was no case to open. "She didn't leave voluntarily," Gerald insisted. "She's mentally unfit. She can't function without supervision." The officer asked for documentation, diagnosis, guardianship, anything legal. Gerald had none because I wasn't mentally unfit. I had simply been controlled. That night, according to Donna's texts, Gerald paced the living room for hours while Donna typed what he dictated. "If that girl talks to anyone, CPS, a lawyer, anyone, we're done. Find the adoption file. All of it, the originals." Donna replied, "You said she doesn't know anything." Gerald answered, "She doesn't. But if someone shows her where to look." He knew. He had always known about the forged signature, the bribed caseworker, the subsidy he collected for 18 years while treating me like unpaid labor. He carried that knowledge constantly, managing the risk without considering that the system might collapse. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of what I might learn once I was free. What he didn't know was that the person he should have feared, the man who had spent 18 years searching for his daughter, was sitting in a Hilton 20 minutes away, building a file 3 inches thick. Margaret laid the documents across the hotel desk with precision. This time, the evidence was complete. She slid a photocopied form toward me, the voluntary relinquishment of parental rights, dated October 2005. At the bottom was a signature, Richard A. Whitford. Then she placed a forensic report beside it. A document examiner had compared the signature to 12 verified samples from tax returns, mortgage papers, and business contracts. "The pen pressure is inconsistent," Margaret explained. "The letter formation doesn't match any verified examples." The conclusion? The signature was produced by someone other than Richard Whitford with a high degree of certainty. Then she showed me a bank record. Leonard Grubb's personal account. On October 14, 2005, 6 days before the adoption was finalized, a $5,000 deposit appeared. The source was a wire transfer from Gerald Talbot's personal account. "Direct transfer," Margaret said, 1 week before the adoption was approved. I stared at the number. $5,000. That was the price of my identity, my name, my father, my childhood. Richard had seen the documents before, but watching me read them was different. His breathing was controlled, careful. "So the adoption can be undone?" I asked. Margaret closed the file. "Under Virginia law, an adoption obtained through fraud, including forged consent, can be declared void. Yes, it can be undone." 2 days before the court date, a letter arrived at the hotel addressed to Allison Talbot. Inside was a single handwritten page on Gerald's insurance agency letterhead and a photograph of me at 3 years old sitting on his lap, both of us smiling. The letter read, "Allison, I don't know who this man is or what he's told you, but he is not your father. He is a stranger taking advantage of a confused young woman. We are your family. We have been your family for 18 years. Come home. We can work this out. I forgive you for leaving. Dad." I read it 3 times. The word forgive changed meaning each time, first like an invitation, then like control, then like restraint. He forgave me for leaving after he hit me. I sat on the bed and felt the room shift. 18 years of conditioning doesn't disappear because a DNA test confirms the truth. A familiar voice in my mind asked, "What if he's right? What if this is another manipulation?" I looked at Richard, who was reading by the window. "How do I know you won't be the same?" I asked. "How do I know you won't use me too?" He set the book down calmly. "You don't. Not yet. And I won't try to convince you with words. Words are easy. The DNA doesn't lie. The documents don't lie. The court will determine the facts. All I'm asking is that you let the evidence speak." Then he went back to reading. The space he gave me was unfamiliar and unsettling because it was so different from what I knew. That night, I reviewed the evidence myself. I placed the Title IV subsidy document beside Gerald's letter. One document showed he received $810 a month for my care. The other claimed he was my family. If he loved me, why did I sleep in a storage closet? Why did I have no birth certificate, no social security card, no identification? Why did the guardianship extension he wanted me to sign focus on continuing the payments rather than my independence? The answer was clear. It had always been financial. Gerald didn't love me. Gerald billed for me. At 11 p.m., I called Margaret. She answered immediately. "I'm going to court," I said. "Not because I fully trust Richard yet, but because I deserve the truth." She replied, "That's all we need." The next afternoon, Derek Simmons from the Virginia Department of Social Services came to the hotel. He asked detailed questions about my living conditions. I described the closet, the workload, the missing documents, the isolation. He wrote everything down. When I finished, he said, "If this is supported by records, it constitutes neglect. The financial element constitutes misuse of adoption assistance funds." Then, more quietly, "This isn't only about a fraudulent adoption. This is about a system that failed to protect you." I told myself I wasn't choosing Richard over Gerald. I was choosing the truth over the life I had been told to accept. The night before the hearing, according to Donna's testimony, Gerald rehearsed his case at the dining table, the same oak table I had polished for years, with a general practice attorney who had never handled adoption fraud. "I have the paperwork," Gerald said. "Signed and approved. I've been a member of First Baptist for 22 years. I coach Little League. Everyone knows me." Donna asked, "What about the subsidy envelope?" Gerald didn't look up. "Nobody audits that. We're fine." Megan passed through and asked casually if she could turn my room into a closet if I didn't come back. Gerald was already preparing his narrative. The generous man who took in a child no one wanted. He didn't know the judge would be reviewing forensic reports, bank records, and evidence of fraud. He didn't know the person he had trained to stay silent was preparing to speak. On the morning of the hearing, Margaret turned a hotel conference room into a preparation space. 5 stacks of documents were arranged with colored tabs. She reviewed them methodically. Stack 1, DNA results, AABB accredited, chain of custody documented, 99.998% probability. Stack 2, forensic handwriting analysis confirming the signature was not Richard's. Stack 3, financial records showing $810 per month for approximately 216 months, $174,960 total, with no evidence the funds were used for my welfare. Stack 4, Derek Simmons' full report documenting neglect, lack of identification, and living conditions inconsistent with adoption assistance. Stack 5, a sworn declaration from Ruth Kessler stating she witnessed ongoing unequal treatment and personally saw Gerald strike me at the birthday party. "Do I have to testify?" I asked. Margaret replied, "Only if you want to. The documentation is strong." Richard, who had been silent, spoke once. "Whatever happens, you're already free." That afternoon, he took me to Banana Republic. "You should walk into that room looking like who you are," he said. I chose a navy blazer, white blouse, and charcoal slacks. Standing in the mirror, I saw someone composed and steady. "Your mother used to do that," Richard said. She'd stand in front of the mirror for a long time, then give herself a small smile. I didn't smile, but I understood. Something inside me was settling. On the drive back, he pointed to a brick bungalow on a tree-lined street in the Fan District, the same red door, white shutters, and porch swing moving slightly in the October air. "That's the house," he said, "the one in the photos." I looked at it through the car window, the house where I was born, the house I was taken from, and I didn't feel the sharp pain I expected. What I felt was quieter, a steady recognition that settles in the body more than the mind. That night, the evening before the hearing, I sat on the hotel bed and wrote in a notebook I'd bought at the CVS across the street. It wasn't a speech or a strategy, just one line for myself. No matter what happens tomorrow, I will never go back to that storage room. I will never answer to a name that isn't mine. I will never again be grateful for being used. I slept 4 hours. I dreamed of a red front door opening, Richmond Family Court, a Tuesday morning in late October. The building was old federal brick with columns at the entrance and hallway floors that echoed every step, as if announcing who was arriving. I reached the courthouse at 8:30, Richard on my left and Margaret on my right. Derek Simmons followed a few steps behind, carrying a banker's box filled with records. Navy blazer, white blouse, hair pulled back in a low knot. No jewelry. I didn't own any. My hands were steady. My posture straight. Gerald arrived at 8:40. Gray suit, burgundy tie. Donna on his arm in her Ann Taylor dress. Megan behind them, dressed too casually for court. His lawyer carried a single file folder. Gerald carried himself like a man who believed this was a routine matter. Then he saw us. His eyes landed on me first. He registered the blazer, the posture, the absence of the girl who used to look at the floor. Then he looked at Richard, then Margaret, then the banker's box Derek was placing on the plaintiff's table. Gerald's face didn't fall. It adjusted. I recognized that look. The fast calculation of someone who controls every detail and suddenly realizes one was missed. Donna's hand tightened on his arm. Megan pulled out her phone, reconsidered, and put it away. Gerald and I held eye contact across the hallway. For the first time in my life, I didn't look down. The clerk opened the courtroom doors and called the case. In the matter of the adoption of the minor formerly known as Hillary Whitford, now styled Allison Grace Talbot, we entered through the same door, standing on opposite sides of the same history. Margaret stood with precise composure and addressed the judge, the Honorable Patricia Dwyer, without notes. Your Honor, we are here to present evidence that the adoption of Hillary Whitford, known for the past 18 years as Allison Grace Talbot, was obtained through fraud. Specifically, the forgery of a biological parent's consent to relinquish parental rights, facilitated by a financial payment to the assigned social worker. She began with the DNA results, the lab technician's sworn affidavit, chain of custody, 99.998%. Judge Dwyer reviewed the report, adjusted her glasses, and set it aside with a small nod. Next came the forensic handwriting analysis. Dr. Ella Marsh's 46-page report summarized in one decisive conclusion. It is my professional opinion, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the signature on the voluntary relinquishment of parental rights dated October 2005 was not produced by Richard A. Whitford. Gerald's attorney stood. Your Honor, my client has a legally executed adoption decree approved by this court nearly 2 decades ago. The petitioner is attempting to relitigate a settled matter based on a paid expert's opinion. Margaret did not turn. Your Honor, a decree built on a forged signature is not settled. It is concealed. We are here to uncover it. Behind me, Ruth Kessler shifted in her seat. A man I didn't know. Later I learned he was a reporter from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, wrote in a narrow notebook. 2 women from Gerald's church sat in the second row, visibly uncomfortable. Judge Dwyer looked over her glasses. The court will hear the petitioner's full presentation. Continue, Miss Hale. Margaret moved to the financial records, and the tone in the courtroom shifted. She projected the Title IV-E disbursement summary onto the screen, the same document I had pulled from a trash bag 6 months earlier. Month by month, year by year. A ledger of my childhood. Mr. Talbot, Margaret said, the Commonwealth of Virginia paid your household $810 per month in adoption assistance for approximately 18 years. That totals $174,960. Can you tell the court how those funds were allocated toward the child's welfare? Gerald straightened. Everything went to the girl. Food, clothing, housing. 18 years of care is expensive. Margaret nodded. Then she called Derek Simmons. Derek testified evenly. The child's living space was a converted storage area near the water heater, approximately 60 square feet. No exterior window, no closet. The mattress showed wear and water damage consistent with curbside salvage. There were no medical records after age 14, no dental visits, no immunizations after 8th grade, no state-issued identification in her possession, no social security card, no documented access to her adoption file. In my professional assessment, Derek concluded, these conditions are consistent with neglect, not with the intended use of adoption assistance funds. Donna began to cry, softly at first, then louder. Gerald squeezed her hand, presenting the image of a protective husband. Ruth Kessler testified next. Calm, direct. She described watching me mow the lawn, wash cars, hang laundry while the biological daughter relaxed. She had never seen me sit at the dinner table when guests were present. She described the night Gerald struck me in front of 30 people. The room grew still. Margaret turned back to Gerald. "Do you know a man named Leonard Grubb?" "No." She displayed a photograph from a 2004 First Baptist Church picnic. Gerald stood beside a thin man wearing a Virginia DSS lanyard, Leonard Grubb, the assigned social worker. "Do you still maintain you don't know him?" "I may have met him in passing." Margaret projected a bank statement. October 14, 2005. Wire transfer. $5,000 recipient Leonard M. Grubb. "Can you explain this payment?" "It was a donation. A donation routed from your personal account directly to Mr. Grubb's personal account." No objection came from his counsel. "I gave that girl everything," Gerald said, rising, voice sharp. 18 years, a home, food, and this is the thanks I get?" "Mr. Talbot," Judge Dwyer said evenly. "Sit down." He sat. The shift was visible. Margaret addressed the court. "Your Honor, Mr. Talbot's own words frame parenting as something given in expectation of repayment. That is not parenting. That is a transaction." She looked at me. I had asked to speak, not because the documents required it, they were sufficient, but because I had been silent for 21 years. I stood, navy blazer, white blouse, hands steady. "Your Honor, I am not here for revenge. I am here because for 21 years I did not know who I was. I did not know my real name. I did not know my mother's face. I did not know that the papers placing me in that house were based on a forged signature. I described the storage room, the mattress from the curb, the absence of medical care, the lack of identification. I explained that I did not know my social security number until 2 weeks earlier, that I worked in that house from age 8, that I was told daily to be grateful. He said he gave me everything, I said, but everything looked like a windowless storage space and control over my life. I am not asking this court to punish him. I am asking this court to state the truth. I deserve that. Every child does. I sat down, then something unexpected happened. Donna stood from the respondent's bench. "Your Honor, I need to speak." Gerald grabbed her wrist. She pulled away. "I wrote the check," she said. $5,000 to Leonard Grubb. Gerald told me it would expedite the adoption. I wrote it from our joint account. I knew what it meant. Gerald denied it. She continued. She described watching the abuse, remaining silent out of fear. Judge Dwyer listened without interruption. After 12 minutes reviewing the documents, the judge looked up. "Miss Whitford," she began, deliberately using that name, "the evidence before this court is clear. The voluntary relinquishment of parental rights filed in October 2005 bears a fraudulent signature. Richard Whitford did not consent to termination of his parental rights. The adoption that followed was therefore founded on forgery and facilitated by improper payment." She turned to Gerald. "It is the ruling of this court that the adoption of Hillary Whitford, styled as Allison Grace Talbot, is declared void ab initio. The adoption is annulled in its entirety." Gerald remained still. The court further orders Gerald and Donna Talbot to make full restitution of all Title IV-E adoption assistance funds received, totaling $174,906, to the Commonwealth of Virginia. This matter is referred to the Henrico County District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential criminal charges, including forgery under Virginia Code Pakshar 18.2-172, fraud related to public assistance, and child neglect under PACPA 18.2-371.1. She set down her papers. The child's legal name is restored to Hillary Whitford, effective immediately. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and that single wooden strike was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Louder than the slap. Louder than 18 years of silence. It sounded less like an ending and more like something unlocking. In the gallery, Ruth Kessler covered her mouth with both hands. The women from church stood quickly, collecting their purses without looking at one another. The courthouse reporter closed his notebook and looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read, something between respect and regret. Gerald remained still while his attorney packed up with clear urgency. For the first time, I understood that even the man hired to defend him wanted distance from what had just happened. The hallway outside smelled of floor wax and old radiator heat. I was walking toward the exit with Richard on one side and Margaret on the other when I heard hurried heels behind me, uneven, unfamiliar with moving fast. "Wait. Megan." Her mascara had run down both cheeks. Her foundation was streaked where she had wiped it away. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, which felt strange because she had always occupied so much space. "I didn't know," she said, breathing hard. "About the money, the subsidy. I thought Mom and Dad were paying for my school from Dad's salary. I didn't know it was." She stopped. The sentence ended with "your money" and saying it would have made it real. I looked at her. The girl who had the Apple Watch, the Toyota Camry, the Queen bed, highlighted hair, and a credit card that never declined. The girl who had laughed when Gerald hit me and recorded it. The one who wanted my closet for her shoes. Part of me wanted to shout. Part of me wanted to walk away without responding. But what I felt in that courthouse hallway, with my legal name restored and my biological father beside me, was not anger. It was clarity. "I hope you figure out who you are without his money," I said. "But that's your path, not mine." She nodded once. I saw something shift across her face. Not remorse fully formed, but the beginning of it. Margaret touched my arm. Richard held the door open. I walked toward them without looking back. Not out of resentment, but because for the first time I was moving toward something instead of only away. Gerald stood at the base of the courthouse steps. He looked reduced, not physically but structurally. His tie was loosened, his jacket unbuttoned. Donna sat in their Buick at the curb, forehead against the steering wheel, engine still running. I was halfway down the steps when he called out the name he had given me 21 years earlier, the name the judge had just removed from the record. Allison. I stopped and turned. He looked at me the way he always had, like something he owned but never fully valued. Beneath that expression was something new, possibly fear, though he would never admit to it. "After everything I did for you," he said, "after 18 years under my roof, this is how you repay me?" Standing there in my navy blazer under the October sun, I understood the weight of what he meant, even after the ruling, even after the forensic proof of forgery. Gerald Talbot still believed he was owed. "My name is Hillary," I said, "and you didn't do anything for me. You did everything to me. And now it's finished." I turned and walked down the remaining steps. Richard stood by the Escalade with the door open. He didn't speak. He simply held the door the way someone does when they have waited 18 years to do it. I got in. As the door closed, I saw Gerald through the tinted window, standing alone on the courthouse steps, jacket open, watching what he once treated like an investment drive away. 6 months later, this is where I am. I live in Richmond, not in the Fan District house with the red door, though Richard offered it, but in a studio apartment off Gray Street. It has tall windows that fill the room with morning light. Sometimes I stand there for a minute before beginning the day. Windows were the first thing I looked for while apartment hunting. I spent 18 years in a room without one. Now I need to see the sky when I wake up. I'm studying for my GED and enrolled in the culinary program at Reynolds Community College. There is irony in that. Gerald required me to cook every meal for 18 years. Now I choose to do it. That is the distinction between something imposed and something decided. The ingredients may be identical. The meaning is entirely different. Richard and I have dinner every Sunday at the bungalow. He is not an exceptional cook. His specialty is overcooked salmon and slightly burned garlic bread. But he prepares it himself. He sets the table for two. He asks about my week and listens carefully to the answer. We are not flawless. There are pauses. There are moments when neither of us knows what to say, because 18 lost years cannot be restored over one meal. But he is there every Sunday, consistently. As for the Talbots, Gerald and Donna are awaiting trial on charges of forgery, fraud, and child neglect. Their house in Henrico County carries a second mortgage to cover restitution. Gerald was asked to step down from the Board of Deacons at First Baptist Church. He resisted. Donna, having cooperated with investigators, may receive reduced charges. Megan moved to Fredericksburg to live with an aunt and has started working in retail, the first job she has held. I attend therapy every Thursday with Dr. Torres. Her office has a ficus plant and a calm atmosphere. She does not instruct me how to feel. She asks questions and allows me to reach conclusions on my own. After 21 years of being told what to think, that process feels unfamiliar but necessary. Healing is gradual. Some mornings I still wake at 5 a.m., heart racing, mentally listing chores that no longer exist. Then I open the curtains, see the sky, and remember where I am. I want to clarify something before I end. This is not a story about revenge. It may appear that way, the courtroom decision, restitution, criminal charges, but revenge would require me to want Gerald to suffer as I did. I do not. I want accountability. Those are not the same. Revenge attempts to burn. Accountability turns on the light, so what exists can be seen. If you are in a family where you are tolerated rather than loved, where your presence is endured instead of valued, where gratitude is confused with silence and obedience is framed as survival, hear this clearly. You are not the problem. You never were. The people who treated you as a burden were managing their own failures and placed that weight on you because you were small enough to carry it. You deserve to know your own name. Family is not paperwork. It is not a decree, an adoption file, or a forged signature. Family is the person who sits beside you while you learn to trust again. The one who answers, of course, when you ask for proof instead of blind faith. The one who holds the door and does not demand gratitude for doing so. Last Sunday, Richard and I sat on the porch of the bungalow on that Fan District street with the red door. He drank coffee. I read. We did not speak, and it was the most comfortable silence I have known. At one point, he looked at me and said, "I'm glad you're here." I said, "Me too." My name is Hillary Whitford. For the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story brought up anger, relief, recognition, or even a quiet understanding that you've stood in a similar room, share it in the comments. I read them all. And if you'd like to hear what happened to the woman whose in-laws forced her out on Christmas Eve, that story is linked in the description. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And if someone is still telling you to be grateful for mistreatment, you have permission to stop listening.